There we are. We are live for another week. And, well, we've got all the crowd here. This week I am mostly being in the theme of anonymity. I am a dark spot on the matrix. I've been looking into how much data I am giving Google and cutting back on it just a little bit here and there. Well, let's kick off the standard way. Bill, what have you been up to this week?
I've been trying to learn from Google how much data they're actually taking from us to assess things like what we might be looking for when we do local searches, and how well they can identify businesses by the queries we find them for.
Yep.
And
I must admit, the amount of data they collect is, well, it's ludicrous. It's amazing how much data they are collecting all of the time.
So instead of just collecting the places you visit during the location history, they track a path around you of 1,000 local businesses in your path wherever you go.
Yep.
So they have a good idea of what you've gone near when you're traveling anywhere. How many social shares and clicks and so on. Yeah. It varies. It's very different here in San Diego County than it was in Fauquier County, Virginia for me. I was often surrounded by farm fields and horse pastures.
Yeah. But they were tracking. They knew whether you or not you were on horseback by the speed you were going at.
Right.
It's been quite interesting looking at some of the data that Google is picking up that people have tracked. And yeah, it's pretty much, if you've got an Android phone, it's permanently tracking your speed, your direction, your altitude, the temperature, all kinds of things like that. And you do think, well, how much of this is actually useful and what for?
If you're walking somewhere and you don't know how to get there and use Google Maps to try to find out, they will automatically know that you want walking directions and start showing those. So they're tracking how fast you are going.
Yeah.
There was
and that works most of the time.
Yeah, there was a paper by a company called Wavy, which was affiliated with MIT. And they said you can use phones to detect if somebody's sick because it'll pick up on whether or not they're moving awkwardly. If they move unusually, that may indicate that they are sick. It can also tell all the other devices that they've done a Bluetooth handshake with to see how many other people you've come in physical contact with and decide whether or not they might become sick too, catching the same thing that you have.
I see. So really, they're just being helpful and watching out for the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
So they'll know who's infected. There you are, people. Google are saving the world. Unless, of course, you are one of the affected, in which case they're the ones that are going to send the soldiers round.
As a marketer, I love all that information. As an individual human being, it's a little creepy.
You know, even as a marketer, I'm not sure I like that much information going around because it's not useful. You know, I used to say that there are lies, damned lies, and other people's statistics. The numbers do not tell you everything, and sometimes the plentitude of data can really mislead you. You know, when you don't know you don't know. But there's times when you've got so much data that you think you know things that you still don't. You know what they've done, not what they're doing. You know, people pick up new habits or do something different all the time. And sometimes all that past history isn't helpful. So does anyone actively, apart from certain types of work, does anybody actively kind of keep their privacy in mind when dealing with Google?
Nope.
No. It's difficult to do.
I mean, I've taken it to a certain extent when any kind of voice activated stuff that I have, I tend to only use ones that they're much worse than Google's and Apple's ones, but I use ones that are run on hardware here rather than online. So I've kind of drawn the line at having an Echo or a Google Home speaker, so I don't want it to listen to me 24/7. But I guess at the same time, my phone's listening to me probably 24/7, and it never leaves my pocket. So maybe that wasn't such a good idea anyway.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing you can do, as we've said a few times about, you know, turning off the listening on your phone. There is no such function.
Well, we did get in the habit of disconnecting our Xbox Connect when we weren't using it, just because there were enough hacks out there that there was a legitimate concern that it could be turned on remotely.
Yeah,
but there's also a risk of people or systems listening in with so many devices now. Your TV, your Echo, or whatever you have, if you have something like that. I don't yet. Your car.
Right. The Internet of Things is coming, and it's going to be an Internet of hacked things.
Yeah.
I think it already is the Internet of hacked things with the amount of stuff you read on the papers and stuff about, what was that? The Mirai botnet? What, they have like 500,000 things in that botnet, and they were all just default passwords of routers and cameras and baby monitors and all that kind of stuff.
Printers.
Yeah.
Printer servers. Right.
I think it's time to question whether or not your baby monitor really needs to be connected to the internet.
Or your Roomba, your robotized vacuum cleaner. There's at least one model now that apparently uses Wi-Fi.
Why?
Beats the heck out of me. I think there's a remote app or something that you can then use to direct its motion or something, which is to me weird. But
in case you feel the need to vacuum while you're away from home.
I think it's more like if you're sitting in your chair and your Roomba is cleaning a room that you think isn't as much in need of cleaning as maybe the room next to it. I'm just speculating, but I'm guessing you could direct it into the next room or something.
I think there's specific functions for when your cat sits on the Roomba and it's not running, and then you can turn it on.
You know, we have 2 cats and we have an old Roomba, and neither one of them wants any part of that thing, much less surfing on it.
Mine neither.
Yeah. I think the next few years are going to really show us the depth of human laziness, as more and more things do get to be automated for us. Although I must admit, having become an SEO, I've already got a good idea of how lazy people can be. You look at some people's idea of content writing or link building or SEO in general, and it really is how little effort can I possibly put in and try and get some, you know, big results out.
I don't think that's kind of selectively SEO related either. I mean, most of the time when you find people with websites and it's like, well, have you made any titles for the pages? Oh, no. Well, why not? It takes all of like, what, 5 seconds or something just to put a plugin on and turn it on. The amount of laziness in every industry, I think, is showing through. People want to do as little possible, don't they?
When I moved to California, I had to get my car inspected, and my check engine light was on, which meant the car would fail automatically the smog test it needed to go through. Now, check engine light can go on for a number of reasons, including your gas cap being loose. That wasn't why mine was on, but I remembered in New Jersey, they used to actually stick a piece of equipment up your tailpipe to gauge how much smoke was coming out of your engine and what quality of smoke. And now they've got it down to checking your check engine light, which has to save them time and effort.
Unless you have a Volkswagen. In which case you can't trust anything that comes out of their computers.
Yeah, well,
What a
as we
disaster.
know, that was pretty much all the manufacturers. It's just Volkswagen got caught.
Yeah, quite
Well,
possibly.
talk about a brand disaster, though. Between that and then also, there's this brand, at least here, out here in the West, called Chipotle, a Mexican food place. And everybody was getting sick because they were getting something like E. coli from it. I don't know whether they'll ever recover from that.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they aren't learning much either. As a chef, when I saw their setup, I just shook my head. That's an accident looking to happen, especially with inexperienced people doing the cooking. It was ridiculous. Surprised more people didn't get sick.
Good point. You were a professional cook, right? Or chef?
Chef, don't call me a cook.
Yeah. No. Sorry.
Yeah, a chef just stands around and yells at people. The cook actually makes things.
That's the big money too, Steve.
That's it.
Who's the mystery man on the left there?
Well, it's Ammon's twin brother. He's had to step in for him.
Yeah, I've, as I say, gone dark this week just to experiment with keeping my data to myself. It has been interesting looking at how much tracking goes on in how many different places. There are times when, I wanted to be able to step outside anyway. I have several different browsers on the computer. Some are set up for more privacy than others. And some of them really are set up for a decent amount of privacy. I've also, got the Tor network, a few proxy switchers and things like that.
So a browser that's set up on a series of anonymous proxies.
Yeah. Also, there's a couple of browsers I did some experimenting with where, I'd say, right, for one of my hobbies, I'm only going to use this browser and I'm only going to use it in connection with that hobby. What will that change about the personalization? If the only thing Google knows about one particular profile is this person is a game player and likes watching other people playing games, likes esports, what will that do to my personalized search compared to one which is all about poetry?
So you don't cross-contaminate your browser streams by logging into Google on more than one browser.
More to the point, I have different profiles set up on the computer, so that even at the Windows level, they're completely different profiles, completely different cookies. There's no access from one profile to another.
So it's not like a mobile device where they're checking an Android ID or an Apple ID.
Yeah, those accounts I don't use the phone with. I did have on one of them an old phone that I used specifically with it for a little while, but to be honest, that was too tricky. You don't want to carry around two phones at once, but if if only one of these identities leaves the house and the other one doesn't, that in itself starts to get suspicious.
Yeah. I did have a look a while ago. There's a couple of browsers that were featured on Slashdot, I think it was. One was called Epic, which is based on Chrome as a browser, but it actually, every part of the kind of platform, as it were, is proxied through Epic's servers in the States, and cookies and any tracking stuff's basically got rid of after every kind of browsing session. So anytime you close it, there's nothing in there, and every time you use it, it's going through their range of IP addresses basically. And it was an interesting concept, but it does kind of really slow down some of the browsing experience, and especially when you're flying around trying to check 20, 30 different web pages at a time for something, it started to cause some problems. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to try and think how it's possible to be private in this world.
I saw something recently where somebody was claiming that the Edge browser would actually download your cookies, and I don't know if I buy into that or not. I certainly would imagine it's possible, but which raises the question: if they're doing that, is there any chance that other browsers are able to, like Chrome?
Yeah, technically it shouldn't be. Any device can only access the cookies it has set, unless you've specifically given it other permissions. Now, of course, Edge being Microsoft, they could get around it because they could build something into the operating system. But then you're not looking at Edge, you're looking at Windows as the culprit. It's been interesting to look at some of the, the privacy issues and how they've grown. I mean, we all know that DuckDuckGo, the search engine, has, gained a lot of market share. It's no rival to Google. But it's certainly gained a lot of market share, and its one selling point is its privacy, and that it is the default search engine of the Tor browser and network. So it has been interesting to see how many people are starting to be concerned about privacy.
I think some people in the mainstream are starting to understand that if you go to Google, you may not get both sides of a story. I think that's becoming more and more mainstream. We've known it for a long time, but I think people are starting to figure it out mainstream.
When you say that, Terry, what do you mean? What do you mean by a story?
Well, like for instance, when you go to look at, say, a news article, right, and you do a search on Google, it's going to be heavily skewed to your personalization. So you're probably only going to get one part of the story. We've been looking at that for a long time. When Steve and I and Dave had a show, Steve noticed that almost from day one of personalization, that you weren't getting both sides of the story. You're getting one side, your side.
I wondered if you were referring to personalization or to some sort of intentional bias on the part of Google and what it shows you. I realize now you're talking about personalization.
It's
Who
more an
bias?
effect
Or
of
it's your
personalization.
bias from the personalization. It's biased by your own biases.
Got
Right.
it.
Google
Okay.
does call their own personalization taking information from a bias set of documents.
Right.
So they do use the term bias to describe their own personalization.
Yep.
They purposefully bias what you see based upon your search history and search history of people who fit into similar profiles as you.
They're probably the first politically correct search engine.
There's actually a lot of truth to that. If you think about the way that PageRank works, obviously it doesn't favor the outlier. It doesn't favor the lone voice. It favors whoever's got the most important links and citations. It favors the mainstream view. So yeah, there's a lot of truth to the fact that Google favors political correctness.
It bases authority upon popularity.
Yeah.
The popularity is determined by publishers.
Yep. Which, you know, it is an interesting point to note. And especially the fact that people, you know, we're back to laziness. People so rarely go to the second and third page of results. They will look at the first page and usually make a decision there, or they will refine their search. They don't tend to dig through very much unless they're doing vanity search. Vanity search, people have no end of the number of pages they'll go through.
Here's another page about me. Yeah.
Well, another good use for page 2 of the search results is SEO prospecting.
Yep. I must admit, I don't usually do it that way. It's an interesting way of doing it, but you kind of think that either they're already spending money to get on page 2, they're just not spending enough of it, or it's something that they're not doing, and that's why they're still on page 2, and they're not really interested in doing it. I must admit, my main way of prospecting for clients when I'm agency side is I look at who's spending money on advertising, who's got budget to burn at the moment, who's doing a big branding campaign and ought to be making sure that that also shows up in search, because it's very interesting sometimes. You watch a company spend millions to own a phrase in people's minds, and then they've forgotten to optimize for that phrase online.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with some of the bigger companies as well. I think that when I was at Vodafone, I was looking at some of the existing sites that they already had, which had good PageRank or lots of inbound links. And there was the, I think it was about 2004, 2005, they'd got this hummingbird advert. I don't know if anybody remembers it. And they had this beautiful website made, about 6-7 pages, had something in the region of kind of about 250,000 backlinks, and they just turned it off. That was it. It was gone.
They're not a big brand here in the U.S.
Probably, I think they are. Well, they probably at least were considered the biggest brand in the UK for some time. I think there's more shares in Vodafone change hands every day than any other company in the UK, or at least they did last time I looked. But I don't have any shares in them anymore.
The most interesting one for me, for years and years, I haven't looked recently, was L'Oreal. The makeup and perfume and all that kind of stuff company, who of course for decades branded L'Oreal because you're worth it. And if you Google because you're worth it, they're the only company that doesn't show up in the first 2 pages.
Oh dear.
There's lots of magazine reviews. There was a Channel 4 beauty show. There were lots of things that referenced indirectly the L'Oreal, but there was no actual result for L'Oreal or anything that linked straight through to it. which was
Okay.
an incredibly expensive waste when you consider how much they spent on the ads and on major Hollywood stars doing those ads to get that phrase in people's minds. But if somebody couldn't remember how to spell L'Oreal, yeah, they're searching for, because you're worth it, wasn't going to turn the site up.
Okay, so if you search for search engine in Google, the top search engine that finally shows up in search results is DuckDuckGo, followed by, not closely, by Dogpile.
Brilliant.
And then shortly after that, YouTube. So yeah, that's in Google. So they could use a little SEO.
They used to actually put themselves number one for quite a while, non-algorithmically. It was just an automated thing. I think they got a little cautious and turned it off when some of those antitrust issues were being raised. So I think it's actually only in the last year or so that that's been turned off.
But it's one of those kind of things. If you're going to go to Google and then type in search engine, it's almost, we've become so used to the fact that we're going to use Google for something. It doesn't really matter whether or not they actually do show up at the top for some of the more generic phrases.
Also, it's obviously the one result you don't want.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm on Google searching for a search engine, I don't want to find Google. I'm already using it to find the others.
Going to a search engine to find a search engine.
Well, actually, a lot of people kind of do that. The same as, back in the day, a lot of people would go to web directories to find other web directories.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I get.
Google is supposed to be the thing that lets us find anything. So, admittedly, you might want to specify regional search engines or particular topical search engines. But yeah, it's quite a reasonable thing to do.
So searching a directory for other directories, you were talking about Tor before, and that seems to be there's about 2 or 3 places on Tor that have decent lists of other Tor sites to actually find them in the first place. And it's kind of a bit of almost a throwback to bulletin boards, where I remember when I got my first modem, there was one bulletin board that had the phone numbers of other ones. Yeah. It's the first place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. The classic portal. Which is always an interesting thing because, of course, to a large extent, Google is always credited as being the death of the portal.
Yep.
Before Google, all of the main search engines were portals, and search was almost difficult to find on their pages sometimes.
But at Google, or did they go bust trying to become portals? Spend all their money on something that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, but you remember, you went to Alta Vista before they came up with the cleaner special Alta Vista that looked a bit like Google. But, it was stock tickers and weather and an email login and the latest news, and, finding the search box was almost tricky.
Yeah, and you could tell that Yahoo started out life as a portal because there was so much stuff on their homepage, you couldn't get away from all the extra garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's some of the stuff on Yahoo, like Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Finance, were some of the top sites on that topic when I first came online. If you wanted financial or sports, that was usually where you went.
Yahoo Finance is still really kind of prominent now. I think it was one of those kind of lessons to learn about running businesses is Google has always been a search engine, and that's it. And even when they had things like, you know, they would link in the fact that your Gmail account was going to be given to you if you had an account. But when they want to promote anything, it may be one thing on the page. Get Chrome, and that stays up for a few months, and then it goes away again, and you're back to just a box and a search button. And it's
they failed sometimes when they tried to become more portal-like. Like they brought Gmail out on April Fool's Day, so people thought it was a joke.
Somebody didn't plan that well enough.
No.
But of course, they have diversified an awful lot. Google Translate was a big project very early on that they put considerable resource into. The Google Academic search is a completely different kind of search. Yes, it's still search, but it's a very different format, scanning in lots and lots of actual books. I would say that Google actually sometimes lacks focus. It's got so many different things going on. However, it's a very big company, and at any time you've got, you know, teams focusing on the most minute details of search, while other teams are focusing on the minute details of anything else.
It hasn't gotten as bad as Yahoo ended up getting.
No.
You know, you remember when the Peanut Butter Manifesto came out, and VP of Search was complaining that Yahoo had too many simultaneous redundant products.
Yep.
Like Yahoo Photos and Flickr. Flickr was a great program. There's no need for Yahoo Photos. Google did have YouTube and Google Videos, so they were doing some of the same thing. But
a lot of times, though, Bill, wouldn't that be where Microsoft tried to do it themselves, or the company tried to do it themselves, and then said, it's easier to just buy something. So Yahoo would buy someone after they tried to do it themselves.
Sometimes they'd buy someone before they tried to do it themselves, like Flickr.
Oh, then
they came out with Flickr, and then they came out with Yahoo Photos.
Yeah.
Really?
I believe so, yeah.
There was always a rumor that they started work on photos before buying Flickr, then saw that Flickr was available and thought, we can use that. But they didn't want to cut the project that they'd already given the green light to, and that's why Yahoo Photos carried on and eventually, you know, came out with a product. I think that they gave them a chance, so to speak. But it could have also been contractual, of course. They may have contracted people to do that job. They may have hired people specifically to develop Yahoo Photos, and then thought Flickr was a really good way of getting it up and live faster.
And they did make some acquisitions and rebranded them.
Yeah.
Like eGroups became Yahoo Groups, and it was terrible.
Yes.
They really hurt it.
Yeah.
So it was a nice product before they bought it.
That's true of almost all the products that Yahoo ever bought. Yahoo was very, very good at buying successful products and killing them instantly by forgetting all the things that had made them successful.
Yeah, I think that anytime a large company buys a smaller company that they don't necessarily understand, almost, because they have this big corporate mentality, and that's one of the things that, I mean, Google has its massive share of cancelled projects, some of them purchased, some of them not. And I think, I mean, going back to like the homepage, I was an avid user of iGoogle when it was a thing. It was brilliant to have my homepage was all my RSS feeds for all the different news I wanted in one place. And when they closed it down, I was honestly quite gutted. But unless they've got some kind of benchmark that unless kind of, you know, billions of people every day are going to use a product, they don't carry on with it. And that's it. They don't have little projects that need a few people to look after them for a few people on the internet. They just deal with the big stuff, and that's it. So it is one of those kind of approaches of large corporations to be able to take something and almost ruin it. But, you know, I mean, even with CNN just shut down Beam, I think it was last week. You know, they paid, like, was it $25 million, I think, for it or something like that. But they can't do it right. They're not capable of running these little kind of personal businesses on that level because they need to be big.
Simon, have you used Slack?
Yes, absolutely. I am a very, very avid Slack advocate and user.
I thought so. Okay. Do you remember Google Wave?
I do.
Was it similar to Slack?
I don't. Wave was the kind of.
It was almost indescribable mix of bulletin board and email and meeting place. Yeah.
I mean, I'm using Slack. I mean, Slack has a lot of add-ons and bots and stuff that you can use, and I use a couple of them for things like uptime monitors and when we're pushing stuff through development stages and things. But the main thing that I like about it is the fact that I can add different teams or join support teams of things like where I've got like the big Reddit's big SEO Slack channels, very good. There's a lot of good people in there. Support channels for Python programming and that kind of stuff. And I can have these open and literally within a second just pop up the right Slack channel, ask a question, and there's lots of people in there. So it's almost like you, I suppose, personalized groups almost. But it just it's a bit of a throwback to when we used Skype for everything all the time. It's just a kind of natural progression where Skype stood still, I think.
It's almost like trying to take a sip from a fire hose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen the bulletin board service that Google just announced? It's like a neighborhood type local news. It's supposed to be hyper local, sort of like a Nextdoor.
Oh, I haven't.
I didn't see anything about it either.
It was just announced last week, so.
I'm still dumbstruck at young Simon there who is comparing it to Skype when I was thinking IRC. That's like IRC. We'd hop from server to server, channel to channel, everything was there, and you could program your client to do all kinds of things.
Yep.
I still have a copy of Merck on my machine.
Yeah. Yep, same here. On FNet.
You're talking about Google Bulletin, huh?
Yeah.
One of my first hobby sites that I used as one of my test sites was a Merck scripting site where I shared loads of scripts that I'd come up with and little tweaks to Merck and things like that.
I say Merck was brilliant when I first started to try and use IRC. There was always that little bit of time where you spent hunting through the different programs that are available until you found Merck, and then you didn't need to look anymore.
There were actually some decent alternatives as well, but yeah, I liked the way Merck was so easy to work with. There were so many add-ons available. It was kind of the WordPress of IRC, really, wasn't it? There were so many plugins.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember using a lot of stuff on FNet, but I think the majority of it was just trying to find really difficult to find songs because there was that many kind of song sharing sites and stuff like that on the IRC channels that you could find those really difficult to find Metallica song when they played live in 1985 in Bangladesh. You know, it's all good fun.
Just Aidan in the audience has woken up there. It's an early morning for him. It's good to see you, Aidan. But yeah, IRC. Yeah, we used to use those a lot back in the day. And it's amazing, I often point out to people that was the first e-commerce I saw. I saw some really useful bots set up that could do, file serving and even process credit cards. And of course, Napster, the file sharing system was actually just an IRC client on its own IRC network.
Napster, I really didn't know that. I never knew that. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all it was. It was their own IRC network server and their own IRC client that didn't allow for regular chat, just file sharing.
Fantastic. I said this Google Bulletin, Bill, this looks really interesting.
Yeah, I've just posted the link to that in the page. So we've lost all our viewers for a few minutes while they go and check that out, except the ones on YouTube. Hey, people on YouTube, you're missing out. Speaking of which, oh, somebody's at the door. Speaking of which, Roger Martini Basti was sharing an article the other day about Facebook jumping on the video market, hopefully to, you know, encourage people to make some money there, but only by begging. They're not going to monetize it themselves. They're going to, you know, let them find ways to monetize it.
Until Facebook figures out a way to make their videos actually easy to search and find, there's no point. Knowing exactly what you're looking for and being able to find it on Facebook is a challenge.
Yep.
They have some issues with site search.
I think
For a while they called graph search.
Yeah, I think with one of the biggest irritations for me on Facebook at the moment is seeing something and then trying to find it again 2 seconds later when it refreshes the feed and not being able to find it again. There was an advert and I was reading through a load of the comments on there, and then you've got new notifications, you scroll back to the top and you never see it again, and can't even find it. So some of the bit of irritation on Facebook at the moment.
It's very, very much at the moment about the stream or your notifications, and that there's nothing in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I do need to have some sort of consistency.
Things away very quickly.
Yeah.
Nothing between ads is what you're saying.
Yeah, the thing is, it was an ad I was actually trying to find again. There was another SEO company had put an ad up and they'd had a really big response to it, and I was trying to have a look and see whether or not it was actually real responses or just kind of piled up ones by somebody else. But,
they'd shown you enough of that ad to be able to charge the advertiser. Now they want to show you a different one. They don't want to show you that ad again.
No. That's probably the reason behind it, yeah.
Yeah, if you're interested in ads, here, have some more.
Have a new one. We've noticed you were halfway through reading this ad. Would you be interested in this ad?
That was, again...
Well, that's the thing I hate most about Facebook, is being scrolling and scanning and going, oh, crap, I wanted to see that, and scrolling back to where you just were and it's gone. Yeah. It's like, what the hell just happened to what I just saw?
Yeah, they kind of need to actually put a button on there that lets you refresh it when you want to.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes against the whole...
When you look, and as long as you scroll down until you click the button. It's not a complex fix.
No, but it also goes against their kind of general... I suppose it's not even a marketing mantra, but just the general way that they actually keep people on Facebook all day is by continually throwing hundreds of cool, interesting things and videos of cats and people jumping off cliffs and all the other stuff.
And making you look at it while you try and find that one thing you actually wanted to read.
There you go.
You're going to see more and more of that. From what I understand, is small business just doesn't stand a chance on Facebook anymore. I've already noticed. I've already noticed that the last week or so that my views have just completely dropped. And I'm about through with it.
It's nothing to do with the size of the. There's a pub near me that does wonderfully well, but it with how much engagement and they share a lot of links and that does well for the back. So, you know, if you're a small business and you're using Facebook, it's all about how much engagement, how many people have subscribed to your content. And that will then, you know, really start to make that work.
Yeah. I think there's just moving off onto another question. Has everybody's search console updated to the new versions yet? I've just seen mine coming through in the last couple of days now.
I've got a flood.
Yeah. I don't know if they're just working their way through some .co.uk's at the moment, or whether or not they're literally. It does seem to be the older sites that have been on there the longest that are coming through first. So I don't know if they're moving through them in alphabetical order.
I haven't noticed any particular order with the various ones that show up in the test accounts, but it does seem to have filtered through most of them now.
So I'm probably at about sort of 15-20% at the moment. I've still got a lot left, and the ones that have just changed over when I got the notification have got none of the reports in there at the moment. So it's kind of taken a little bit away for now, but we'll hopefully that'll be through in the next day or so.
Yeah.
From some of the videos and stuff I've seen, it looks really good.
It's been very interesting watching YouTube struggle to monetize videos. I mean, obviously, they're backed by Google. They've got advertisers up the wazoo, but of course, they've had issues in the past. As we talked about this almost a year ago when Yahoo had its adpocalypse, where advertisers were unhappy about some of the ads, some of the videos that they were being put alongside. Wall Street Journal and a few others threatened to pull all their advertising dollars. Basically, I think it was altogether 5 advertisers that were spending about $750 million between them a year. All threatened to pull out unless Google, you know, put its act together in giving them more control over where to advertise them.
I think the marketing team at Google have managed to turn that around and focus it quite well on the content creators rather than having to deal with it themselves. I mean, with this, I can't remember the guy's name who's been in the news in the last couple of weeks after that video from the suicide forest in Japan. And you don't see the advertisers going, Google, you need to sort this out. It's, oh, look what this guy's done. Let's concentrate on him, take the focus off us, so that we're going to have to get people to try and monitor themselves rather than them doing it.
Well, they introduced a machine learning algorithm. They introduced it very, very quickly, and it made knee-jerk reactions. It really upset the gaming community because, of course, Google did it with their primary focus, as it usually is, on hate sites, violence, anything like that. And, of course, most of the games are about violence.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, gamers that have been playing and been YouTube idols for a long time were suddenly hit very, very hard. 90% or more of their revenue taken away overnight, because this machine would just turn off monetization. We're not showing any ads on this until it's been, you know, vetted. But their views, people subscribe to a channel to watch the videos the minute they come out.
Mm-hmm.
So most of a channel's viewers pick it up in the first 2 days, and it took Google anywhere from 2 to 5 days to answer any of the appeals and check through and go, oh yeah, that's okay, you can have your monetization back. By which time it was worth nothing.
Yeah.
So it created I mean, it was great marketing for Patreon. Patreon doubled its size and number of people using it overnight. It really did. Twitch got a lot more people moving over to it. And yeah, I mean, YouTube is now used as the freebie advertising channel to get people to the places where you actually make money.
Yeah. And I think there's a big amount of, I mean, things like Patreon and stuff like that, I'm a real fan of. There's a couple of guys that make just rock and metal covers of everyday songs on YouTube, and I've sponsored them on Patreon for just over a year now. And I think just being able to make sure that I don't want to go on there, and I'm always going to use ad block, so you're not going to make a lot of money from me viewing your adverts on your channel, but I'd like for you to carry on. Here's some money, keep it up. So I think things like Patreon are really going to make a big difference for the smaller kind of content creators over time. But yeah, it's definitely a way forward for a lot of people.
It's a huge risk for YouTube. They have now lost control of the purse strings of most of their content creators. And I don't
they're making it worse.
Come on, Steve.
They're not actually making things better at YouTube. YouTube is actively going out and making things even harder for the new rules they've been putting out the last few weeks are draconian, if nothing else.
Yep.
Requiring you to have, 1,000 subscribers and for whatever, how many thousand hours it was of active viewership before you're even considered to make money.
Mm-hmm.
I know channels that are in the 1,000 subscriber range. 1,000 subscribers are incredibly active people. They're evangelists who are out there really hammering things. And, it's gotten to the point where if somebody were to come along, similar to YouTube, Alpha is trying really hard, but Alpha is a pay-to-view service. It's only like $5 a month or something like that, but still. Somebody comes along with YouTube, somebody may find their lunch being eaten.
Yeah. But unfortunately, this is one of the downsides of Google products generally is they do tend to experiment with all of them rather than sometimes make smart business decisions. Google, although they know to experiment within reason, and they don't let them experiment too much on the ads, apart from seeing how many we'll put up with. But every other product, it does seem like they're allowed to play with it and experiment with it as much as they want. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, we'll just can it. I'm really worried that they'll do that with YouTube, because YouTube is a genuinely useful resource to a lot of people. But as I say, right now, the monetization has moved away from YouTube itself. YouTube no longer has control of the purse strings of its best creators. And if somebody else controls the finance, well, all somebody really needs to do is buy Patreon and say, right, you can use all of these video servers, but not YouTube. And YouTube's in trouble because a lot of people would have to switch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd almost be a good idea for YouTube to have a kind of viable competition as well. Because, I mean, Vimeo for a long time has been utilised by certain people because it seems to have a lot better kind of privacy settings, and I actually prefer their embed player for when you're putting videos and stuff on sites, because it's far easier to make those little sets of videos and make a private page for them. But YouTube is just so popular. It is the go-to place for a lot of people. And I mean, in the last 6 months, I can't remember how many video results in a Google search have not been YouTube ones. That seemed to probably a year or two ago, there were a lot of Vimeo ones and various other ones that were showing up, and embedded ones on people's pages. They're just not there now. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're just not in the searches I'm looking for.
No, they're definitely not there.
Come on, Steve.
I'm saying they're definitely not there. We noticed that a while back too, because several customers are 100% Vimeo users. They won't even touch YouTube. For a lot of the reasons you mentioned, but the biggest one is that access to their videos, because they're using their videos for lead gen or for selling products or whatever, and they want to control that entire experience. They don't want random people just popping in and seeing the video.
That is one of the big concerns that a lot of people miss about YouTube. Is, of course, YouTube insists that you release everything onto the Creative Commons license. So people are allowed to take your video and rework it and mess it about and all kinds of things like that under fair use. Which is a problem for some companies who, don't want to give people the right to take bits of their video out of context and reuse them. They do have serious competition, though, Simon. Although it's within a niche, it's within the biggest niche of all, and that's, of course, e-gaming, Twitch. Twitch actually does a lot more money and monetization on videos generally, I think, than YouTube does. You get live events on Twitch that have 10,000 viewers and more, and you don't usually get that kind of activity going on YouTube. It's all about the historical views.
Yeah, and I'm quite a fan of watching StarCraft 2 specifically, and there's a couple of streamers that I subscribe to on Twitch and give them their kind of $5 a month, and they've got some. I mean, the one guy's I think's got just over 4,000 subscribers, and people are giving like tips and stuff like that. But Twitch puts on what I consider to be some of the best coverage of the Blizzard kind of WCS games, when they have all of the gamers come together in the competitions and they can win like £20,000, and there's nothing like in comparison to Twitch for that kind of coverage. It's really got the esports stuff. It's really got kind of wrapped up, Twitch has. Yeah,
and I mean, for anyone that's not into the scene, Korea especially, it's massive. The gaming market is huge. The world tournaments of various games fill huge stadiums.
Absolutely.
And they're charging for the tickets. This is as big as any sport out there. It's big as the Super Bowl. With a live audience tuning in. And it's seriously big money that is involved. You look at the production values of some of the videos on Twitch, and they have multiple camera crews all around the place. They're doing the full broadcast quality stuff. Multiple anchors, multiple people commenting on the sport as it's happening. It's phenomenal stuff. And yeah, we are talking hundreds of millions of dollars invested.
Yeah, absolutely.
YouTube doesn't even come close.
And hundreds of thousands of dollars in prize money as well, which is why some of the Korean guys, they live in kind of camps essentially. They just practice playing these games 16 hours a day. Yep. They share techniques and stuff like that and practiced against the other best people in the industry. And it's, there's probably 3 StarCraft 2 players that aren't Korean that are in the top leagues, and it's really unusual to see them.
It's a funny coincidence, actually, because StarCraft was one of the original esport games. It was one of the very first games that really caught on worldwide.
Yeah.
If you look up the history of esports, they do mention StarCraft specifically, along with several other things. But,
it was the biggest one, and the people who were very good at it were famous. They were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just in sponsorships from manufacturers of keyboards or headphones and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it makes the thing of chess champions that we used to talk about in the 80s look like child's play. And that was big. That used to make news. But esports are on all the time. All of the major news companies do cover them. ESPN has a separate thing on esports. The Guardian covers esports. Sky News, Sky Sports has an esports page.
Are we going to see DeepMind on Twitch playing StarCraft?
They did try to do StarCraft 2 with an AI, and I think it was DeepMind. I think they did it with. StarCraft 2 is probably one of the most complex games to play, and I think it would struggle against kind of normal high-level players. Never mind some of the kind of the really good ones. So it's they did build an AI bot to play it, and it'd be interesting to see where that goes. I've not heard anything about it since they announced it, so I don't know whether or not it just got beaten up repeatedly and gave up.
They did a white paper in Nature on DeepMind playing StarCraft.
Yeah, I think it was about 8 months ago, 6-8 months ago, something like that, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, more difficult than chess.
It up so that it's getting to play lots and lots of different kinds of games now. Everything from first-person shooters to some of these sort of card games that are out there. They did open it up, didn't they? They kind of let anyone offer their games to it. I think didn't it get access to the complete Blizzard network or something like that?
Yeah, they Blizzard and DeepMind kind of got together, but I know they opened StarCraft 2 because they had to make some sort of basically a programming interface for them to be able to hook it in to make it do stuff, because there's lots of safeguards in place to stop that kind of thing from happening normally, to stop anybody from cheating. But it's I read about it 6 months ago or more, and then I've not heard anything about it since. I did try and find some videos of it, but I couldn't when it was announced. I'll have to have another look now.
Yeah. It's going to be a difficult challenge because obviously the thing that AI really struggles with, the thing computers aren't good at, is interpreting visual information. So usually they have to give it a different kind of interface if it has to actually process visual information. Computers do this a lot more clumsily than people do.
Yeah, I mean, with any visual kind of stuff, I mean, I was part of an image recognition startup about 4 years ago, and any kind of image recognition stuff that is working has to be very consistent. If you can find consistency in the things you're looking at, then you're able to train a neural net to recognize them reasonably well. But if you've got any kind of variation in there, even slight variation, things stop working. And one of the biggest things with AIs and machine learning and neural nets is half the time you've trained it and it now works, but you don't actually know why. So you have to do it all again with a new data set, and that might work better, it might not. So sometimes adding more confirmed ways of recognizing stuff doesn't actually improve the algorithm that you've built, which is one of the biggest challenges with image recognition.
Yeah. And again, image recognition, when it's working with still images, is a very, very different thing to working with an image that's moving. A video stream is much, much harder to process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just even doing real-time stuff, we were asked about that repeatedly, and it's like, well, at the moment, us doing a single picture, because we had a clothing recognition company, and we had to work out which way the person was facing, try and put a skeletal map over the top of that person, work out skin tone so we could find hands. And if you couldn't see one of the hands, you couldn't tell how they were standing, if they were just wearing a red shirt and one hand was behind their back or something. It was so complex just to do the real basics of trying to find out where the person is in the image in the first place. Faces are dead easy. We've been able to do those for years now, and there's plenty of open source ways of doing it. But try and move on to the body and work out which bit's the torso versus the legs, and you're into unknown territory, basically. I mean, there's a couple of libraries out there that got halfway there, but they certainly weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Even the facial recognition. I was researching some time ago, again to do with privacy, people experimenting with digital camouflage.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, just the smallest amount of face paint can completely throw off image recognition of faces because it is just looking for these core features very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's looking for a triangle with 2 dark areas each side to indicate the eyes. If those aren't there because you've got some shiny glasses on, then it doesn't work anymore.
Yep.
At which point you have to move on to glasses recognition and see if you can find them. They're probably on the face, and then you work from there, which is why we ended up having to close that business down because it became so complicated.
Yeah. But I think somebody really gave image recognition a complete fit by painting an extra eye on their nose.
That's brilliant.
A triangle of eyes, and it couldn't work out which way up their head was.
That's amazing.
So it does show you that, you know, these things are actually clever but dumb at the same time. You know, they're using tricks and shorthand ways of doing things that seem clever but actually very, very easy to fool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the simplest way to fool most image recognition, especially with photos and things like that, is because painting an eye on your forehead or on your nose looks a bit weird when you're walking around. But if you just get a load of infrared LEDs built into a piece of clothing around your neck, then photos don't work anymore. So they can't actually pick you up on cameras or anything like that because it'll just completely blind the camera. So that's the one of the cleverest ways I've seen of avoiding. I think it was a CCTV avoidance that I saw on a DEF CON once. And yeah, a necklace made out of infrared LEDs.
Google Photos seems to be doing a good job of indexing the photos I take and recognizing people in them.
Yep.
I haven't seen the people recognition in there. When is that somewhat recent?
It also has pets recognition.
Oh, excellent.
Sorted my photos by pets in them. Fantastic. And indexed them. Yeah.
I know you need to consider your privacy there.
Well, so far they haven't had pets get together and do a class action lawsuit. So Google are experimenting with that while they can.
Yeah.
We are past time, so let's do a very, very quick round of what people are up to in the week ahead. Bill, kick us off.
Sure. I'm working on a new blog post that has to do with property attributes of entities in knowledge bases and how those might be used in searches, in queries, like the old Robert Duvall says, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning," in which movie? Google is able to look that up in places like Wikipedia and say, that's Apocalypse Now. That's what we're moving towards in search. It being able to think about and answer queries based upon the facts within them.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Ammon in his book Semantic Search covers part of that about Web 3.0, you know, and you know how Star Trek was actually with their recorders and their computers asking computers questions. You know, it's pretty amazing. I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, I got his latest one, the Sniper Mind. Obviously, you can't really see. Hold on a second. Let's adjust this so that you can actually see what we got. We got the Sniper Mind.
Oh yeah, that's his next one. Yeah.
But it turns out you completely negated the Kevlar hat. Simon, what are you up to in the week ahead?
I'm finally launching that new platform, so I'll be sending you all an email to try and get you to sign up in the next couple of days. But yeah, got that to do. Finished off that mentions work. And thank you, Terry, again for your recommendation. I actually found a really nice way of being able to use Scrapebox to find some additional mentions just based off the URLs that were unlinked, and then run it through Link Assistant to find ones that weren't linking back. That worked out really well in the end. I managed to get about 7 or 8 times more URLs for that mentions work than I was getting just out of the Ahrefs tool, so that's worked really well. I've got a couple of site launches, a couple of bits to do on our own site. I've still got to finish the website for this new product, which just takes forever, and learn a little bit more about SaaS product pricing. So yeah, it's all go again.
Steve.
Me.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey. Once again, I seem to find myself spending more on things other than work. I'm currently reading a proof copy of our friend Doc Sheldon's new book, and supplying some notes and things for him for that. And I also started doing a lot more writing. I've got the outline finished of a book that I plan to write and hopefully have done by late spring. Yeah, mostly just not, all the client stuff's kind of on autopilot at the moment. So I just have to, fiddle with the dials a little bit every couple of days and see how things are going. But it's actually kind of nice around here these days.
I'll dig into it properly another week, but just a very brief outline. What's your book about?
I'm doing a very simple presentation of technical SEO for small businesses. I find myself answering a lot of technical SEO questions for people who really don't have the money to hire somebody to come and do the work. And so I'm constantly fielding these questions, and I figured since I'm fielding these questions all the time at local meetups and stuff like that, I would go ahead and put together a book that hopefully explains it all in a way that reasonably handy people can do it themselves, or at least get far enough along the pipe to be ahead of their competitors who aren't doing it at all.
Cool. Terry, what are you up to this week?
Oh, just, the normal stuff. Trying to learn some PHP and MS SQL. Little different interface, and plan to remove everything from Unix and put everything on Microsoft again.
Yeah, I'm not even going to comment. As for me, I'm currently working on something that is kind of a big article, although it's more likely going to be a series of articles, and it could end up turning into a book itself. But I'm kind of writing my book of links, everything I know about links, everything people ought to know about links. Because it does seem to be the thing that people struggle with the most, struggle to understand the most, and make the biggest mistakes over. So big project. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We will see you again next week. I hope we are well past time, but that's the way we roll. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.